This clip is an overview of anaerobic and aerobic metabolism. First, we'll talk about anaerobic metabolism. Very simply put, anaerobic metabolism means the production of ATP without oxygen. The fuel source that we can use to produce ATP anaerobically is glucose. So as I mentioned, a key point for anaerobic metabolism is that it does not involve oxygen. And the site of production in the cell is in the cytoplasm. You have heard already that the mitochondria is an important organelle for the production of ATP, but it is also important to note that some ATP can be produced in the cytoplasm as well. In terms of the metabolic pathways that produce ATP anaerobically, the ATP-PC system and glycolysis are both what we call metabolic pathways that produce ATP in the muscle cell during exercise. The ATP-PC system stands for ATP phosphocreatine system. Sometimes you will see it written as ATP-CP system, so those two terms are used interchangeably. The PC stands for phosphocreatine, and we'll look at that in a little more detail on some following slides. And glycolysis is the name of another metabolic pathway. It's more complex than the ATP-PC system, and we'll also look at that in a bit of detail later on. So anaerobic metabolism is the production of ATP without oxygen. Aerobic metabolism is the production of ATP using oxygen. And in addition to glucose, we can also use fatty acids and amino acids to produce ATP in aerobic metabolism. As I've mentioned, it requires oxygen, and aerobic metabolism produces ATP in the mitochondria of cells, okay, blown up, shown here. This mask on the fish represents the fish swimming in waters with low oxygen as a result of global warming. Therefore, the fish requires the oxygen mask. This slide is showing you the rest to exercise transitions and the order in which the energy systems are activated. Okay, remember, during exercise, muscle contraction, skeletal muscle contraction increases, and we produce ATP in the muscle to support that contraction. The first system activated is the creatine phosphate system, or phosphocreatine system. So that's initiated first and supplies the ATP for contraction. Anaerobic glycolysis is then activated, supplying the ATP for muscle contraction. And then finally, the aerobic pathways are activated, supplying energy for muscle contraction. So pathways 1 and 2, remember these are anaerobic pathways that don't use oxygen in the production of ATP, and the third system, the aerobic pathway, uses oxygen in the production of ATP. The first two systems here produce ATP in the cytoplasm of the cell, and aerobic pathways produce ATP in the mitochondria of the cell. Keeping in mind that the ATP is broken down within the sarcomeres because that's where the energy is required. When you finish this clip, you can attempt the quiz on LMS called Overview of Anaerobic and Aerobic Metabolism. And when you're happy with the content covered in this clip, you can move on to the next clip, which is Anaerobic Metabolism.